Be cool, be kind, be classy. A cupcake so sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions and lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Machegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcake's sweet and sassy. And not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Good morning. Good morning, my friends, and thanks so much for coming to hang out with me today. We're doing a twofer. This will be the first of two shows, at least today. 11:45, we're going to pivot over to Norfolk Superior Court in Massachusetts to cover the continuing saga of Miles King, Brian Walsh, and other cases trying to get a hold of Michael Proctor's text messages. So we're going to do that because that's a noon conference. But today we go back to Long Island. This is the 20th video that I've done on the Long Island serial killer cases involving Rex Heuermann. You know what? I'm going to agree with you on that, Mass Dad. So it's not an unpopular opinion. You and I do disagree quite a bit. He says, I disagree with Judge Mazzi's, Mazzi. Actually, it's pronounced Mazzi to me. I'm Italian. I would say Mazzi. It's Mazzi's Fry decision. We're going to talk about that. I happen to agree with you there. I don't think it's tested enough, this technology, but nobody asked me, and I'm not the judge. However, we'll get into all of that. In case any of you, this is the first you've heard of this case. Wow. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with this case, let me give you a very quick rundown. This case is crazy. I am a Long Islander. I am born and bred Long Island. I guess actually we moved here from Forest Hills, Queens, when I was about 3. But I've been born and raised on Long Island, except for all of the years that I went to Colorado to go to college and law school. SCO buffs. In the early 90s, body parts started washing up on our beaches here on Long Island. And at the time, I was a young mom, and these were the beaches that we took our children to. Gilgo Beach, Jones Beach, Fire Island. These are our ocean beaches. The North Shore of Long Island borders the Long Island Sound. And if you go across the Long Island Sound, you get to Connecticut. And the South Shore of Long Island is the ocean. And there are no ferries from the south side of Long Island, right? So that's the South Shore. The South Shore, that's where our ocean beaches are. It's really like from North Shore to South Shore. I don't know how many miles, Mass Dad, 15 miles. So growing up around the water and having the best ocean beaches, in my opinion, outside of maybe Hawaii. When body parts started washing up here in the early 90s, we all got like really freaked out. Because we're like, okay, if we go to the beach, what are we going to find? It's not just going to be plastic bags and needles and, drug paraphernalia. It's going to be body parts. And so for many, many years, not only were the body parts washing up on the beaches, but there were also body parts that were found in wooded areas in Suffolk County. Suffolk County is the easternmost county of Long Island. The western county is Nassau. So Long Island is Nassau and Suffolk counties. Some people say Queens is included, but I say no. It's technically it's on the island, but it's part of New York City. It's part of the 5 boroughs. Body parts in Manorville and other places. And all of these killings were not always done by the same method. Some were dismembered, some were not. The Gilgo 4 bodies, which were wrapped in burlap and were found on the north side of Ocean Parkway in Bramble, were wrapped in burlap. And those bodies were discovered. When did they start to be discovered? 2010, 2012? I don't know. And now I got to get back to all my original notes because I thought everybody would know about the case, but here we are. Nobody was arrested with regard to the Gilgo 4 until summer of 2023. So my first show on this was it 2011? Yeah, because I think my first show on this was in July of 2023. And finally, there was an arrest. And Rex Heuermann was arrested. He's described as ogre looking. I think he's between 6'5" and 6'7". Very large man, Caucasian, architect from right here on Long Island, Massapequa. And here's the thing, in my opinion, the reason nobody was ever caught is because we had our own issues of corruption on Long Island. And so when people say it's impossible, cover-ups are impossible, and they were saying this when we started covering the Karen Reed case, it's just impossible, it couldn't happen, all these people couldn't cover it up. Well, listen, not only did I handle the Catholic Church cases for the victim/survivors of clergy SA here on Long Island against the Diocese of Rockville Center, which was perhaps the most covered up, massive, conspiracy that the United States, I don't know, maybe has ever seen. It's been going on for decades here on Long Island, and it's been going on for a lot longer than that in Ireland and other places. And it was covered up by all of the architects of the policy involving the Catholic school children and other people who would befriend these priests. And they had policies in place, and I don't want to get into that right now. I have seen cover up and corruption at the highest levels. Suffolk County, the reason, in my opinion, why the Long Island serial killer was not caught sooner is because James Burke was the chief of police of Suffolk County, and him and his buddy, the district attorney, Tom Spoda, were involved in some other things that wound up with the two of them serving time in Club Fed. And Jimmy Burke kicked the FBI out of the investigation for the Long Island serial killer, which at the time was only the Gilgo 4, the 4 women whose bodies were found along Gilgo Beach, because he didn't want the FBI getting into his own business. And he's had some issues since then. And in the 20 show playlist that I've linked in the bottom of the show notes here are some other shows involving James Burke and his recent arrest. I guess it wasn't recent, within the past 2 years. He was arrested for soliciting a male prostitute at, where was that? In Farmingville. It was some sort of monument where people were known to go solicit. It's horrific. Trust me when I tell you I've seen it at the highest levels. I didn't watch the Peacock documentary. I just actually, so many of you may have seen the Peacock documentary. It's like 3 episodes and I haven't watched it yet. We're going to talk about it. Well, we can't really talk about it. Hi, Stacy. I got your email. I'm so sorry I did not respond back to you. Thank you, but I did get it. Interesting stuff I heard came out in the documentary about Rex Heuermann's daughter, Victoria, which I haven't really dug into yet, so I can't really talk about it yet. So throughout the 90s, and also in my 20 show playlist, I fell in the rabbit hole, call me Alice, right? And I started digging into cold cases from the 80s that I thought could be connected to him, because we had one serial killer here, at least. And I'm like, there's no way that there could possibly be more than one with regard to all the Gilgo bodies. So I keep jumping around because I'm so familiar with it. 11 bodies were found eventually all along Gilgo. Rex Heuermann has been tied to 4 of those. He's also been tied to 3 other women that he's been indicted for. 2 of them, their bodies were found in Manorville. John Ray. I like John Ray. And one of them, Sandra Costilla, refresh my recollection, her body was found along the parkway. Stacy, I did get your email. Yes, I just said that a couple seconds ago. Maybe you weren't logged in. Stacy won the giveaway we did the other day for the new merch for the tour shirt. So LawTube's most hated mod, Scott, who also is a Long Islander and also did 25 years with NYPD, he doesn't think that Rex was the only one. Well, it could have been a network of people that were working with Rex, right? Okay, so as it stands right now, Rex Heuermann has been tied to 7 bodies. The Gilgo 4 and 2 from Manorville. One, I can't remember right now where Sandra Costilla was found. Wantagh, I want to say. There is more than 6 million pages of evidence that has been turned over to the defense. Rex Heuermann was arrested in 2023. Never trust anybody who doesn't eat the pizza crust. We have the best pizza here in New York, and this guy dumped his pizza crust in a garbage pail, and he was being tailed, and they got his pizza crust out of there, and they linked it to him and his DNA. And there were hairs found on some of the Gilgo victims, rootless hairs. We're going to get into that because the DNA is an issue here. Rootless hairs that matched Rex Heuermann's wife. Okay. I love the pizza crust. I think it's between 6 and 8 million pages if you printed it all up. That's how many terabytes of evidence they have against this guy. They've got burner phones connected to him. They've got cell phone triangulation connected to him. They've got, when they seized all of his electronic devices, they found a manifesto on one of his computers. You got to go back to that show where I went over the manifesto. It's disgusting. You know, things to look out for, things to be careful of. What kind of equipment should I use? What kind of things should I bring with me? How to do it? All kinds of things like that. And it's horrific. And you can just, we were talking about this last night on my, or yesterday on my other show. The reason why nobody's watching mainstream media anymore is because of the bad reporting that they do. And I mean, there's a good example in the New York Post article, which indicated that he's been charged with 11 bodies. He hasn't. He's been charged with 7, but not all at the same time. And so the most recent thing to happen is that Michael Brown, who is the public defender for Rex Heuermann, has asked that it should be split into more than one trial. We should try the Gilgo 4 as one and then the rest individually, because it's more prejudicial than probative, because these 7 victims were killed over a 17-year period of time. We're going to go over the decision to that motion. There was another motion with regard to the DNA evidence, a motion to suppress the DNA evidence, because they're using something called nuclear DNA, and that has never, ever been used in New York courts before. We've covered a lot of cases with DNA evidence, mitochondrial DNA, which runs on the mother's side, and other DNA types of testing. But this is, I don't even want to say relatively new. It is relatively untested, this new type of DNA testing, which can test more degraded samples like rootless hairs. And the judge issued, I think, a 26-page decision on that DNA evidence. We're going to just look at some news clips quick because I don't have time today to read that whole decision with you. But something else also happened that I found was not getting a lot of press. It was something that was found in 2023 that was just reported on in early September. Let me know if you've seen this, because I saw it at the time. And then, of course, we got sidetracked on so many other cases that I didn't get a chance to dive into it. But check this out. So we know that as a kid, Rex Heuermann in the 80s worked at Jones Beach, which is further west of Gilgo. That Jones Beach is in Nassau County. There's also a concert venue there. And Gilgo is all the way in Ocean Parkway, all the way in Suffolk County. Hang on a second. So less than 2 months after Heuermann was arrested in 2023, detectives who were working the Gilgo Beach murders went to Jones Beach after discovering disturbing evidence, including a bloody glove near where the suspect Rex Heuermann once worked. This is wild. New York does not allow cameras in courtrooms. We just never have. And as it stands right now, this trial is not going to be televised, which means that when it happens, I will be there because this is my backyard. I've been waiting for this guy to get caught since the 90s. But that could change, but I'm not promising anything. I don't think the judge is going to allow courtrooms cameras in. Do you think, Mass Dad? Because I don't think they will. There has been only allowed in the courtroom so far for hearings. I've been to at least 2 hearings that I covered for you. There's been a still photographer who's been allowed in, a pool still photographer, and they're allowed to have cameras in the hallway. So they do, an after court press conference generally, but no cameras in the courtroom. Right. Emily says, you told us there's a concert venue there. Like we all don't have. No surprise. She's at Jones Beach, stuck in our head all day. I know, with my Dave Matthews selfie in the intro. What was I saying? Oh, thanks, Mastad. Just try not to curse if you don't mind in the chat, because YouTube has been really weird lately. In fact, they just remonetized a whole bunch of channels that they had shut down during the panty for people that talked about the vaccine and things that YouTube did not like. And people thought that was fake, but it's real. It says less than 2 months after Heuermann was arrested in July of 2023 in connection to 3 of the 11 Gilgo Beach murders. So initially he was connected to 3 in July of 23. Then he was eventually connected to Maureen Brainerd Barnes, the 4th. Workers 3 miles away at Jones Beach unearthed a cache of weather-beaten purses and women's and girls' clothing buried in the sand just outside the East Bathhouse. Police sources say, here he is, Rex Heuermann. Oh, let me go back to my previous thought. In 2010, when one of the victims went missing from, I think, Babylon or North Babylon or West Babylon, her name was Amberlynn Costello, went missing. One of her roommates called the police, and he was interviewed by the police. And he told the police that his roommate, Amberlynn Costello, was on Craigslist or something as a sex worker, trying to make money to buy drugs for him and the other roommates. And it's all in the witness statements. I'm not just defaming her as a victim, and I'm not defaming her occupation in any way. And it should be noted that all of these people who went missing, all of these women, were also sex workers. The roommate gave a description to the police of the man who came to pick her up because he had been in the house before. They had this little scam going where she would invite men into the house for alleged services, and she would ask for the money up front, and then he would come in from the other room pretending to be the jealous boyfriend, chase the man away, and they would just keep the money. So I think it was the day before that they did this to Heuermann, allegedly. And then Heuermann got mad and he started texting her, I want my money back. I want a refund. You owe me, kind of things. And the police have all the text messages. And so he went back and said, I'm outside, leave your phone inside. And so she went without her phone, and she was never seen again until her body was found on Gilgo. When she went missing, at the time she went missing in 2010, the roommate told detectives the description of Rex Heuermann. Said he's between 6'3" and 6'5". He looks like an ogre. He has thick wire-rimmed glasses, and he drives a first-generation green Chevy Avalanche. Okay? Now look, I'm not a detective, but sometimes I think I should have been. As an attorney practicing here on Long Island, we always had access to the DMV computer if we needed to run plates for car accident cases, if we needed to look up anything. All that needed to be done, in my opinion, was to cross-check green shabby avalanches with the registrant who was between 6 foot, let's say 3 and 6'7". Okay. Simple cross-check, right? NYPD is hiring. Maybe I should have another side gig, huh? That's all they had to do. Because not only was the green Chevy Avalanche registered to him, but I'm willing to bet there weren't a whole hell of a lot of green Chevy Avalanches, first generation, in the area. But they didn't do that because of Jimmy Burke and because of Tom Spoda and because of whatever they were doing and trying to cover up. They didn't do that. It took a female New York State trooper who was on the Gilgo task force around 2023 to put the pieces together and figure out that it was this guy. And yes, he did own a green Chevy Avalanche. And yes, it was still in the family over 13 years later because he gave it to his brother. Okay. So that's wild, right? That's all they had to do. That's all they had to do. Susie Q. Should have caught him then. They described his green truck and his size. It would have been kind of easy, I would bet. But they didn't do it. And then it goes on to say, architect Rex Heuermann worked 4 summers as a young man at Jones Beach. The workers were cleaning the area and called police immediately. Police sources said the clothing was from the late 1980s and early 1990s. The items were buried 2 feet deep. The items included rayon miniskirts, shorts, pants, and shirts, some with their buttons popped off, suggesting the clothing may have been torn off or forced open, sources said. And here's the Suffolk County Police crime scene mapping, Gilgo Beach, death investigations, Ocean Parkway, Babylon, New York. For those of you who are not familiar, I'll just put this graphic up. Maybe if I could make it a little bigger. And this is a good representation of where the original 11 bodies and remains were found. So the first Gilgo 4 were found in December of 2010. And the reason they were found is because there was a Suffolk County police detective who was out training a canine, and they were looking for Shannon Gilbert. Some of you may know that story. It's too long of a story to talk about right now. She is still at this time considered to be an accidental death. I think she was also a victim, but nobody asked me. And yeah, we're not here to bash all cops, and so we're not here to do that. There are really good cops and really bad cops, and so if you do bash cops in general, Scott will be all over it. Melissa Barthelomew's body was the first to be found December 11th of 2010. This guy was out. They were looking for Shannon Gilbert, and they stumbled upon the remains of Melissa Bartholomew. I think she was wrapped in burlap also. And then they started expanding the search. And then on the 13th, they discovered 3 more bodies: Megan Waterman, Melissa Brainerd Barnes, and Amber Lynn Costello. And that was on December 13th of 2010. The distance between victims, we'll call Melissa Bartholomew as victim 1, which is right here. Melissa Bartholomew, and victim 2, which is Amber Lynn Costello, is 0.16 of a mile. The distance between Melissa Bartholomew, victim 1, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes, victim 3, is 0.05 of a mile. Megan Waterman's body was found 0.07 of a mile from Maureen Brainerd Barnes. They were wrapped in burlap. They were, at least one was secured with a belt, some with duct tape. And I believe that hairs were found on all four. One may match Rex, some matched the wife. Don't hold me to that right now because I didn't debrief all my notes before I came back on here. And it's been a while since we've done a show on Rex Heuermann. And my opinion had always been that he put them there so he could drive by and visit them. That was my opinion based on what I know about serial killers. We don't know because he still says he's innocent. Then in March, victim 5 was found. Parts of Jessica Taylor were found. March 29th of 2011. That's right here. If you see my cursor, that's not a flyer on your screen. He's also been charged with Jessica Taylor's murder. I believe that her torso was found in Manorville in the woods, which is a little bit further east. Number 6, which this old graphic has as a Jane Doe, was found 4411. And the toddler is also found 4411. The toddler's remains have been matched to the woman they called Peaches, whose remains were found in Hempstead Lake Park. They said that, I think they did confirm that that's Peaches' daughter, right? But refresh my recollection about who this Jane Doe was eventually. Was this also some of Peaches' remains? Because now I'm getting confused with all the millions of cases that we're covering. And then there's also been remains of an Asian male that were found April 4th of 2011. So there's your little overview of Gilgo. But then there were 3 more found. So this is kind of an old one. It's an old graphic. Also found at Jones Beach all the way back in 2023 was a blood-covered workman's glove and a mysterious leather strap hidden inside a shack that was still used by beach employees. Heuermann, 61, he's now 61, worked at Jones Beach during the summers of 1981 through 1984 when he was in his late teens, prosecutors revealed in February. The East Bathhouse has been closed since 2009 and should reopen next summer after recent renovations. Only in New York would something. The bathhouse has been closed for 16 years. They're definitely taking this seriously given how close it is to Gilgo Beach, a source explained. It could be a coincidence, though. I don't know. What do you think? A bloody glove? They should be able to test that blood. And they should be able to get some DNA off the clothing. And I wonder, has it ever been reported whether the Gilgo 4 were found nude? Because I don't think that's been reported. I remember them saying that it was there were pieces of clothing, certain pieces of clothing missing. And so when I did a show on the Eastbound Strangler, I just thought maybe that could be related because they were all missing their shoes, and that was in Atlantic City. All of the items were collected by investigators for forensic testing. It was unclear if results had been returned. Jones Beach ends where Gilgo Beach begins, and prosecutors contend that Heuermann is well acquainted with Ocean Parkway, where most of the victims' bodies were scattered. Jones Beach has for decades used burlap fencing during the winter months to guard plants on the dunes, as well as protect the dunes from erosion caused by wind, the sources noted. Some of the Long Island serial killer's victims were found wrapped in burlap. And then here's the East Bathhouse at Jones Beach, which was closed for renovations. And then here's my example of bad reporting. It says this collage of photos shows 10 of the Gilgo Beach serial killer's victims. Well, no, he's been charged with 7. But there are the photos of the 10. And he has not been charged with Karen Vergata, has he? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He has not been charged with Karen Vergata. This is Karen Vergata in the red with the ponytails. They were found completely nude. Okay, well, Cindy Brady, maybe that's their clothing. I'm just saying. A judge this week ruled prosecutors could present DNA evidence at Heuermann's trial. The court hearing is set for September 23rd, so that was Tuesday. Prosecutors utilized a more advanced but unproven method for testing hairs recovered from some of the bodies, making a first for New York. Heuermann is accused of killing Valerie Mack, 24, Melisa Taylor, 20, Megan Waterman, 22, Melissa Barthelemy, 24, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25, Sandra Costilla, 28, and Amberlynn Costello, 27. He's pleaded not guilty to all 7 murder charges. Investigators are still trying to connect Heuermann to 4 other bodies found dumped along Ocean Parkway at Gilgo Beach. All of the victims were sex workers in the New York metro area. Which could be another reason why these cases, well, in addition to the corruption at Suffolk County, I'm not even going to say that, but because perhaps they wouldn't be reported missing right away. Perhaps they were easy targets for him. They all had kind of the same physical makeup and, innocent until proven guilty, of course. So obviously, I'm not saying anything about him actually being guilty. Michael Brown is an excellent, excellent attorney. He's a defense attorney. He's been appointed public defender because in Suffolk County, legal aid, which is our assigned counsel out here, they don't handle murder cases. So private attorneys are assigned these cases and they're paid by the county, and Rex Heuermann is we're paying for his attorney. Here's, okay, so this is a piece from 2 weeks ago because we don't have time to read that whole giant motion or that whole giant decision, which is like 26 pages. Here is a news piece talking about the Judge Maisie's decision to allow the nuclear DNA in. This happened early, I think September 3rd, this decision came out. Here you go.
All right, a huge legal victory for prosecutors in the case against accused serial killer Rex Heuermann.
Yeah, this was big. A judge's decision clears the way for critical DNA evidence to be presented at his upcoming trial. Defense attorneys are challenging that very decision. Both sides are due back in court in 3 weeks. So joining us to talk more about this is Suffolk County DA Ray Tierney with the impact of this ruling in his case. DA Tierney, good to see you.
Oh, wow.
Good to see you.
This was huge. It's actually unprecedented.
Hang on. It's also important to point out that I don't think he's ever tried a case, okay? And he has decided that he is going to try this case personally. This is going to be very interesting because you'll see, maybe we'll see Michael Brown talk in the next piece that we're going to watch. Michael Brown is top notch. He's like gloves off. Ray Tierney loves the camera, but he's never tried a case. So the fact that he's going to try this murder case, as far as I know, he's never tried a case. I could be thinking of Michael Marcy. I could be conflating them. And look, you can see the sweat coming. You can see the sweat beating on his face. Like it's going to be like the matchup of the century, Ray Tierney versus Michael Brown, right? All right, here we go. Here's Ray Tierney talking about, he learned a lot about DNA in like a week.
And it is the first time ever that this type of cutting-edge genome sequencing from a lab in California has been permitted here in New York. So for the average everyday person watching this play out, can you explain what it is and really how it relates to this case?
Sure. So for the first time in New York State, and one of the first times in the country, we are utilizing this technology, which is able to obtain a DNA sample from a hair shaft. And using a technique called whole genome sequencing, where the entire genome is sequenced and hundreds of thousands of DNA results are found from locations along our DNA.
So we know that you've used this high-tech genome sequencing.
All right, it's not sweat, it's a glare. You're right, because it moves.
But we also know that you use traditional DNA testing. Is it safe to assume that the results actually match?
Yeah. So we have, in this case, we have 9 questioned hairs. These are hairs that were left at the crime scene, and these hairs match with the defendant, his wife, his daughter, and one other person.
Hold on, that's Michael Brown. For those of you who don't know, there he is, bald head.
That were left at the crime scene, and these hairs match with the defendant, his wife, his daughter, and one other person associated with the defendant.
Okay, so there's 9 hairs that were found. matching his daughter, his wife, him, and one other person connected with the defendant. Who's the person? Who's the fourth person?
I guess, when you look at this, right, and it is impressive technology, why isn't it used more?
Well, I mean, I think this is a situation where the criminal forensics lags behind the science. And so this is used in an anthropology, it's used in gene counseling, it's used in medical evaluations, and it's just now being brought into the courtroom. And we would submit it's long overdue.
And I think the big question is now that, these link him to 7 women dating back to 1993. But with this advanced testing, could he be linked to other cold cases through this process?
Well, I mean, I think just not him. I think this opens the door, because when you're talking about cold cases, oftentimes you have skeletonized remains, and the only thing that's really there is left at the scene to examine is bones and hair. And this technique allows you to derive a nuclear DNA result from those types of remains, and that's the only type of technique which would derive a result.
So defense attorneys immediately filed a motion, right, to appeal the judge's decision and the ruling here, which means you're back in court again on September 23rd. Now, I can't believe, by the way, that Heuermann was arrested more than 2 years ago, and no trial date has yet to be set. So with this further delay, with this further court date, how much could it delay a potential trial?
Well, I think what we're, as I said yesterday, we're going through the pretrial phase and hurtling towards the trial phase. So at the next court date, we anticipate answering that motion and getting a decision from the judge. There's also a motion of severance. We'll get a decision on that. And I think after that, it would be the court's intention to schedule a trial date.
DA, because this is not.
Oh, remember I did a show when they were excavating the backyard, and Duty Ron was driving by the scene when they were excavating, and they found that they called it a vault in the basement that had a mattress in it. It's wild. And then John Ray came out with some new witnesses, one of whom says that she was with her police officer boyfriend, and Rex Heuermann had put up an ad for swingers to come to his house, and that this woman went there with her police officer boyfriend from New York City, and they picked up a woman at Port Authority who looked like Karen Vergata, and they went to Rex Heuermann's house, and the wife also was there, and she was pregnant, and she wouldn't have relations with the woman witness because she said she thought it was because she was black. And then Rex Heuermann and the other guy disappeared, and they left Karen Vergata there, and she was running around naked in the front yard, and she was like, I don't want to leave. And the police officer boyfriend was like, don't worry, I'm a police officer. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry. And Kippy Hippie is here and says the other hair was from his first wife. I'm at work. I want to keep stopping and helping you answer any questions on the Gilgo know-it-all. Good. I did know it all, but it's all the way in the back of my brain behind all of the stuff that we've covered since then. He tried cases. I may be thinking of Michael Marcy, but did he ever try a murder case? Did he ever try a murder case? I know Matt that is from Long Island and also is now in Massachusetts, so he knows the court systems in both cases. And so I don't know if he was doing white collar crime, or I may be conflating it. Kippy Hippie, maybe you can chime in on this. But he hasn't been tied to Karen Vergata yet. And a lot of people are saying, oh, the wife didn't know anything that was going on. Well, this woman who is still alive, who is a witness, who did a press conference with John Ray, says she was there. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier.
Widely used, right? And because you're talking about the science and technology, is there a potential that this could be flawed, or that will be the argument used? Or was this the key to get you to connect the dots here?
Sure. I think it's when you say it's not widely used in the courtroom. But it is widely used in the scientific field.
But that's the problem. That's a problem for me. It's not widely used in the courtroom, but we're going to use it in a case for a serial killer in New York, when New York is usually very, very strict with regard to procedure and rules and everything else. So I don't know. Whether his wife knew doesn't matter at all. I disagree. If his wife knew, she could be a co-conspirator. She could be. Her hairs were found on the bodies. I'm just saying, in my opinion. So let me just play this. Otherwise, I'm going to keep interrupting and we're never going to get through it.
Field. So again, this is just an opportunity for when you go to the doctor, when your wife who's pregnant it gets fetal testing. It's all done through this whole genome sequencing. So this is a modality that has been used for decades, and again, the court has just finally caught up.
Yeah.
Before we let go, do you have a quick update on Heuermann's health and his relationship with his wife?
That's really something that is outside. I don't have control of the defendant. He's represented by counsel, but I understand that she was at the court appearance yesterday. And as far as health, I believe he's healthy.
Okay, DA Tierney, I appreciate you're very busy. Appreciate your time coming on to explain this, and keep us posted on the trial date and the hearing in September. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Okay, we're going to move on to that. Yes, that hearing. But without the nuclear DNA, they do have a lot of other evidence against him. They've got cell phone evidence. They've got a lot of other stuff. But it definitely helps. Yeah, whether his wife knew or not, again, it doesn't matter with regard to his prosecution. Just because she was into swinging, not the same. They lived together. Her hair could easily be there. That's true too. But I don't know. I just don't know. And I may be conflating him with Michael Marcy, who has never tried a case. That is accurate. So excuse me if I misspoke. But yeah, if he is convicted, the Friday decision will be the front and center of the appeal. I do agree with that. This is from the hearing that was Tuesday.
New developments today in the Gilgo Beach murders case. A judge in Suffolk County ruled Rex Heuermann will face a single trial for all 7 of his alleged killings. The decision denied a move from the defense to split the case into multiple trials. Long Island reporter Shantae Lands has the details from Riverhead.
Accused Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann is thrusted back into the spotlight after a Suffolk County judge determined that the estranged Long Island husband and father of 2 will face a single trial for all 7 victims, as opposed to splitting it into up to 5 separate trials.
The judge ruled against us. We don't like the decision. We don't agree with the decision. But in our system, we accept the decision and we move forward. That's how our.
And this is Michael Brown. And he's like, we've watched press conferences before with him. He's like, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom. It's going to be a great watch because I don't find, he's a lot more aggressive in your face than Tierney is. And so it's going to be quite a matchup.
Our system works.
Heuermann's lead defense attorney, Michael Brown, argues that the first 3 charged killings should be tried separately from the rest because of the timing of their deaths, spanning 17 years, how they were killed, and the locations where the women's bodies were found. Prosecutors who want one trial pointed to Heuermann's familiarity as a former seasonal Jones Beach employee. From 1981 to 1984, prosecutors say Heuermann used to drive an all-terrain vehicle going from field to field, making sure beachgoers were off the property after it closed. A role prosecutors say made Heuermann extremely familiar with Ocean Parkway at night, which is the same spot where 6 of the bodies tied to his case were found.
I think a big consideration by the court, which was stated in their decision, was that planning document. And that planning document talks about we would submit talks about murders that had occurred, that are about to occur, and that are going to occur in the future.
The 62-year-old Manhattan architect from Massapequa Park was first arrested in July of 2023. He pleaded not guilty. Heuermann's attorney spoke briefly with him today after court.
We got the decision in chambers. I handed it to him. We had a brief conversation with him in the back. We moved forward.
Today, Heuermann's estranged wife, Asa Ellera, and their daughter, Victoria, also appeared at court.
This has destroyed their lives. July of 2023, July 12, 2023. Victoria went to work. Asa was home as a housewife. That's never going to be the same.
The defense attorney now wants to file.
Yeah, that typically happens when someone's arrested and they've been held in jail and they're facing, 7 murder charges. But if you haven't seen the daughter before, this is the daughter on the left. This is Victoria. And that is the wife, Asa, on the right. And this is Robert Macedonio. I don't know how you feel about him, Mastad, but There's a lot of stories about him. He's representing the family.
Went to work. Asa was home as a housewife. That's never going to be the same.
The defense attorney now wants to file more motions. That could happen in January, and those filings could push back the start date to the trial till at least late next year. In Riverhead, Shantae Lands, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Okay, Esme says, do you want a short summary on what WGS is, biomedical scientist? You're happy to send an email with the difference versus genetic profiling. Yes, I would love that. And also, if you do send me an email, shoot me an email. I will send you the decision if you're interested in reading it. It's like 26 pages and you can tell me what you agree with, what you don't agree with. That would be fantastic. I would love that very much. My email is in the show notes, fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. I do read all emails. I do not always have a chance to respond to them all because I get thousands, but just put, something in the subject line that will let me know that it's you. Okay. Thank you. Because I'm not a DNA expert, never claim to be, never want to be. I'm more of a math and logic girl, not a science girl. And so I start to glaze over when they start talking about things like DNA. My eyes start to glaze over, but I am going to, if we can get to read that decision, the 6-page decision, because after that was granted, after the motion to suppress was denied, allowing in this novel nuclear DNA, the defense made another motion saying that the nuclear DNA results should not be allowed in because Astria Forensics, which operates in the state of California, does not hold a New York State Department of Health permit. That too was denied. If we have time, we can read that decision as well, because that is also short. So let me get back to my, let's look at the papers. That's what we do. We look at the papers. And this is an order in the people of the state of New York versus Rex Heuermann. And this is 6 pages. And this is Judge Maisie's order on the severance of the trials or of the cases into separate trials. By notice of motion dated January 29th of 2025, the defendant moves for an order severing counts 1 through 6 of the indictment from counts 7 through 10 for separate trials, and for an order severing counts 7 through 10 of the indictment for separate trials. The people opposed the motion by affirmation dated February 25th, 2025. Defendant submitted a reply affirmation dated March 10th of 2025. Okay. And the decision was just rendered a couple of days ago in September. So when everyone is always complaining about how long it takes judges to decide motions, here we are in New York, and it took a lot of months for the judge to decide this. The defendant asserts that count 1 through count 4 of the indictment charges him with 3 counts of murder in the first degree for intentionally causing the deaths of Melisa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. Counts 4 through 6 of the indictment charge him with 3 counts of murder in the second degree, also for intentionally causing the deaths of Melisa Barthelemy on July 10th of 2009, Megan Waterman on June 6th of 2010, and Amber Costello on September 2nd of 2010. The remaining counts of the indictment, counts 7 through 10, each charge the defendant with murder in the second degree for the intentional killing of different victims, to wit, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, and Sandra Costilla. The reason, and we've talked about this before, you can only get first-degree murder in New York in very narrow circumstances, one of which is killing a police officer. Another of which is serial killing. And that is why these first three victims, Barthelemy, Waterman, and Costello, he's charged with first degree. Defendant argues that counts 1 through 6 of the indictment are properly joined pursuant to CPL 2-2020, as even though they are based on different criminal transactions, the offenses are of such a nature that either proof of the first offense would be material and admissible evidence in chief upon the trial of the second, or evidence of the second would be material and admissible as evidence in chief upon a trial of the first. However, the defendant asserts that counts 7 through 10 of the indictment are only properly joined because of the fact that they charge offenses defined by the same or similar statutory provisions and are the same in law, and therefore are properly subject to a motion to sever. Defendant states that count 7 charges him with the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes on or about July 9th of 2007. Count 8 charges him with the murder of Jessica Taylor on or about July 21 to July 26 of 2003. Count 9 charges him with the murder of Valerie Mack on or about September 1 to November 19th of 2000. And count 10 charges him with the murder of Sandra Cosilla on or about November 19th to November 20th of 1993. Thus, each murder in counts 7 through 10 are separated by years from one another, as well as from the murders alleged in counts 1 through 6. As a result, the offenses alleged in counts 7 through 10 would not be admissible in the trial of the murder in the first degree charge as proof of the multiple murder elements of those offenses, right? So multiple murder, aka serial killing, is why it rises to the level of first degree in New York. Furthermore, the defendant argues that there is no evidence that any of the crimes alleged in counts 7 through 10 would be admissible in the trial of counts 1 through 6 to show motive, intent, absence of mistake or accident, common plan or scheme, or the identity of the defendant as the perpetrator. In addition, defendant asserts that the crimes alleged in counts 7 through 10 would not be admissible in the trial of counts 1 through 6 to show that the defendant was acting in concert or as necessary background information on the nature of a relevant relationship or to complete a narrative. The defendant argues that before evidence of another crime may be introduced as evidence, there must be a showing that the defendant was the perpetrator. However, here, defendant asserts that the people's evidence of his identity as the perpetrator is circumstantial at best. Defendant also argues that there is no unique and consistent modus operandi common to all 7 murders, as some of the bodies were found intact, others were found dismembered, and some bodies had indication of mutilation and others did not. Some were wrapped in burlap and others were not. And some were deposited in Gilgo Beach and others were deposited in Manorville and North Sea. As a result, the defendant argues that the offenses charged in counts 7 through 10 cannot be properly joined with counts 1 through 6. Defendant further argues that the interest of justice demands that counts 7 through 10 be severed and tried separately from counts 1 through 6, and that counts 7 through 10 should be severed and tried separately from each other. Here, defendant asserts that there is substantially more evidence applicable to counts 1 through 6. In addition, evidence regarding the victims in counts 7 through 10 will be introduced to show that each of those victims was contacted shortly before their disappearance by a burner phone. There will also be evidence with respect to the locations of those victims' cell phones, as well as the location of the burner phones used to contact those victims, evidence of the defendant's phone records, and evidence that those victims' phones were used by the person alleged to be the killer after the victims disappeared. Yeah, that was wild. This person used the victim's cell phones to taunt one of the sisters of one of the victims. However, no such evidence will be introduced as to the victims in counts 1 through 6. Furthermore, with respect to victim Amber Costello, evidence will be introduced with respect to witnesses' observation and description of a vehicle and person seen with Amber Costello. That's what I was telling you about before. The roommate who said he drives a green Chevy Avalanche and he looks like an ogre. However, no such evidence will be offered with respect to any of the other 6 victims. Defendant also asserts that there's a significant disparity among and between counts 7 through 10 as well. The murders of each of those victims occurred years apart from one another. In addition, with respect to victim Jessica Taylor, evidence will be introduced to describe a dark-colored pickup truck seen in the vicinity of where her remains were found, as well as testimony that the defendant owned a dark-colored pickup truck. However, no such evidence will be offered in relation to the victims of counts 7 through 9. There will also be evidence introduced concerning the victim in count 7 regarding contact with a burner phone that is not related to the victims in counts 8 through 10. Oh, look, Scott and Mailstat are making friends. I like that. Yay. Okay. Bonding over their Long Island roots. Love to see it. Listen, when we get through this, I'll tell you my opinion, but let me know what you think as we're reading through this, whether or not it would be more prejudicial for the defendant, Rex Heuermann, to have all of these cases tried together, because I think so. I happen to think so. In conclusion, defendant argues that a trial of all 10 counts would make it difficult for the jury to segregate the evidence by its separate and distinct relevance to each incident, thereby creating a risk that the defendant is improperly convicted based on the cumulative effect of the evidence, which is exactly what I'm saying. The defendant would further be prejudiced, as the jury is more likely to find the defendant guilty when it is suspected that he engaged in similar crimes. Thus, due to the danger of unfair prejudice to the defendant and the fact that his right to a fair trial would be compromised, severance is appropriate. That's the argument of the defendant. In opposition, the people assert that although counts 7 through 10 represent separate criminal transactions, proof of each offense is material and admissible as evidence in chief of the other charged crimes, making severance of any of the counts inappropriate. Despite minor differences in each of the 7 homicides, I don't know if they're minor, but the people argue that the pattern used by the defendant in each murder was distinctive to establish a specific modus operandi, thereby making the evidence of the other murders probative of the defendant's identity, his specific intent and motive, and also completes the narrative of events leading up to his arrest. In addition, the people assert that severance is also inappropriate because the victims are inextricably interwoven by geographic proximity, where they were found, victimology, their gender, age, physical characteristics, and socioeconomic standing, digital and physical evidence, hairs, mementos, retention of publications specific to each crime, etc. Forensic analysis, the defendant's own planning document found on his computer, his blueprint of the murders he used to plan each one, and his internet searches for violent acts of rape and the sexualization of mutilation. The people point out that the defendant lists modus operandi as a problem in his planning document. Oh, he did. That's true. He did. He had a list of problems. And also explains the minor inconsistencies between the condition in which the bodies of his victims were found and the material he used to package them in. The people assert that even though there were minor inconsistencies with respect to some of the murders, the victims the defendant targeted, the method of the defendant's initial encounters with the victims, and the defendant's post-mortem behavior all followed the same exact pattern. The people further state that there are numerous witnesses, including expert witnesses, who significantly overlap with regard to each of the victims. Additionally, the scientific and forensic evidence in each of the charged murders is so inextricably interwoven that such evidence pertaining to one victim would necessarily be admissible as to each of the remaining 6 victims. The people assert that separate trials would preclude the jury from hearing the full narrative of events, reduce judicial economy, and significantly prolong the process and expenses incurred by taxpayers. Well, that's one thing that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, or the county in Norfolk County, Massachusetts, doesn't seem to care about. Thus, justice and judicial economy requires a single trial. That's the state's argument. The people, so in New York, we say the people. In Massachusetts, they say the Commonwealth. In other jurisdictions, they say the state or the prosecution. Here we say the people with a capital P. The people also argue that the defendant has not established good cause for severance, nor has he established that he will be unduly prejudiced by a joint trial. The people argue that any prejudice defendant alleges can be easily cured by proper jury instruction, and that contrary to defendant's argument, the jury will be able to segregate the proposed evidence. In reply, defendant asserts that the people's argument that there is a common modus operandi applicable to all 7 murders is without merit, as the only commonalities among the victims are their gender, ages, and their occupations as prostitutes. The victims' remains were left in different dump sites. Some were wrapped up in burlap, some were decapitated. Some were decapitated, amputated, and mutilated. This is triggering. I should have warned you. I'm sorry. In addition, the defendant asserts that the people's argument that there is overlapping evidence common to all 7 murders is lacking in merit. Defendant states that the publications specific to each crime that were found in the defendant's home were found among dozens of other non-related publications in his home and were not preserved in any fashion or cut out or earmarked. It was like he was making a scrapbook of all the articles. The defendant further argues that while the planning document found on his computer could be relevant with respect to the murders of Sandra Costilla, Valerie Mack, and Jessica Taylor, it does not relate to the other murders. The defendant also argues that while the searches of pornographic, we have to say, websites made on his computer, which depict S-type torture could relate to the murders of Sandra Costilla, Valerie Mack, and Jessica Taylor, it is not relevant to the 4 other murders. Thus, all of this evidence would prejudice the jury. Further, the cell site evidence, which purports to place the defendant in close proximity to the areas where the calls were made at the time they were made, this evidence only applies to some of the victims. It is well settled that multiple offenses are joinable in a single indictment where, quote, even though based upon different criminal transactions, such offenses or the criminal transactions underlying them are of such nature that either proof of the first offense would be material and admissible as evidence in chief upon a trial of the second, or proof of the second would be material and admissible as evidence in chief upon a trial of the first. Quote, evidence may be deemed material and admissible within the meaning of CPL 200.20(2)b if such proof would be admissible under any of the recognized Molyneux exceptions, including motive, intent, and modus operandi. Citing People v. Rauchi, which is a 2013 case. Holding counts properly joined where the proof adduced with respect thereto was material and admissible as to the defendant's motive, intent, and modus operandi. I haven't read that case, but I would imagine that it does not involve 7 separate counts of murder and 7 victims over a 17-year period. But I could be wrong. It has also been held that where the charged crimes were committed against more than one victim, joinder was found to be proper pursuant to CPL 200.22b, based on the remarkable similarity in the manner in which the crimes against both complainants were committed. So, both complainants. Citing other cases. In addition, it has been held that joinder is appropriate where there's an overlap in evidence between the charged crimes, and also found appropriate where it completed the narrative of all the events charged in the indictment. In the case at hand, the people argue, and this court agrees, that while counts 7 through 10 represent separate criminal transactions, proof of each charged offense is admissible and material to the proof of the other offenses. Here, common overlapping evidence including the defendant's pattern and modus operandi among each offense, not only establishes the defendant's identity as the perpetrator of the murders, but his intent and motive to commit each murder. The victims were all petite women in their 20s who worked as prostitutes. While defendant argues that there was no unique modus operandi due to the fact that the remains were dumped at different places, the evidence shows that Gilgo Beach was used as the main site. Is spelled wrong. It should say SITE, but it is typed in as CITE, which is a case citation. And we know a dumping site would be SITE, but I digress. Just stands out to me. For discarding, Gilgo Beach was used as the main site for discarding 6 victims' entire remains or parts of their remains, and that some other parts of the victims' remains were found in Manorville. While defendant also points out that only some of the victims were wrapped up in burlap and only some were decapitated, amputated, or mutilated, it has been held that a unique modus operandi was established, even though, whereas here, there were minor differences in each attack, but the patterns of the initial encounter and the specifics of the S attacks followed the same pattern. Additionally, the court finds no merit to defendant's contention that the published newspaper or magazine articles with respect to the murders of all 7 victims found in his home were not mementos, as they were found among dozens of other publications and were not preserved in any fashion or cut out or earmarked. While the defendant contends that the planning document found on his computer does not relate to some of the murders, this court disagrees, as within the planning document, the defendant references making notes and quotes from a book written by John Douglas entitled Mindhunter, Inside the FBI's Elite Serial Crime Unit. In addition, there are other notes made by the defendant which could easily be attributed to all of the murders, such as, quote, more sleep and noise control equals more playtime. And another quote, wash body inside and all cavities. And another quote from his planning document, remove marks from torture, etc. These notes also relate to the defendant's various internet searches, which the defendant claims may be related to a few of the murders, but not all of them. The court disagrees. The joinder of all of the charges also explains the narrative of events leading up to the defendant's arrest, including the forensic evidence, to wit, hairs found on 6 of the victims, which were all found to be attributed to someone who either resided with or was related to the defendant at the time of the murders. So there's only 1 victim of the 7 that did not have a hair found on them, apparently. Thus, counts 7 through 10 were properly joined with counts 1 through 6 in the indictment based on the fact that evidence of the first 6 charges would be material and admissible as evidence in chief upon a trial of charges 7 through 10 and vice versa. In addition, joinder was proper based on the overlapping evidence, the similarity in the manner in which the crimes against all of the complainants were committed to prove the identity, pattern, motive, and modus operandi of the defendant, and for the completion of the narrative of all of the events charged in the indictment. Finally, in light of the foregoing and in the interest of judicial economy, counts 1 through 6 will not be severed from counts 7 through 10, and counts 7 through 10 will not be severed from each other for a separate trial for each of those counts. Therefore, it is ordered that the defendant's motion is denied. XOXO. Honorable Timothy P. Mazie, Justice of the Supreme Court, and that is dated September 18th of 2025. Let's go to the chat and get your thoughts on this. Karen T says, horrible. You have to wonder how many more bodies are in the area. There's so many cold cases of young girls that went missing from like hot skates, roller rink and stuff in the 80s that they're all contained in the playlist, which is actually linked below. And here's the Glairer checking in from his connection in Atlanta. Safe travels. Looks like you guys had a good old time. Good old time last night. Oh, Mass Dad knows about the Marty Tankleff case, which is a famous case here on Long Island. He says, how rich and ironic that Mazie is a justice after the justice that he denied Marty Tankleff. If you want to give a little brief summary in the chat, Mass Dad, for anyone who's not familiar with the Marty Tankleff case, you may do so. I only have 20 minutes before we jump on to our next live, so I want to do some questions and chatting a little bit before we move on to the next. Laura Riker says, LISK got me hooked on you, Melanie. You're my #1 girl. Oh, thank you. You've been here for 14 months with me. Thanks, Laura. And then Laura says, I got married Sunday to my amazing partner and best friend, Andrew, after 15 years together, raising our 6 wonderful combined Brady bunch. I love you more than ever and forever. He loves Melanie too. It's a prerequisite. Oh, congratulations, Andrew and Laura, who just got married on Sunday after being together for 15 years. That's amazing. She finally said yes to the dress. I love that. Oh, I love that so much for you. Thanks for your 20. And I'm so glad that that you guys did it. You did it. You did it. Yay. Which reminds me of my side quest of watching The Golden Bachelor last night. Did anybody watch The Golden Bachelor last night? Because I feel like we need to do a debrief on that show. Not that Laura is in her 70s, like many of these women who were on The Golden Bachelor last night, the premiere of the new season, but I just need to talk to someone about it. Thank you, Laura, for your 20 and many, many congratulations and many, many years of love to all of you, to both of you, I should say. Mass Data said he has sent more emails to me than he has to anyone in his entire personal life. That's crazy. Hello, my darling. Aren't you supposed to be in school? Scarlett. Scarlett's coming in and saying, hi, Mom. Are you in school? Are you supposed to be on your computer? Hey, sweet pea. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in detention because I'm not going to come pick you up. Yes, we are doing driving lessons. Scarlett and I are doing driving lessons together. And it's a little bit, she's really good, actually. Out of the 5 kids that I've taught to drive in my house, she's the best one so far. Don't tell the others. Don't tell the others. She immediately, and if you know Long Island, how short the entrance ramps are on our parkways here. And some of my kids avoid the parkway at all costs. And Scarlett's, I'm like, you want to get on the parkway? She's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And she does it. She's got no fear, kind of like her mother. Where did she get that from? And you might notice she's named after 2 Grateful Dead songs because, you know. And Kippy Hippie's been here for a month and says, thanks for covering Gilgo, my top favorite case. That's awesome. Thank you. Jen and Toxic says, Mel, why are they letting someone so unprepared to try this case? Well, I guess Mass Data is telling me that I may be conflating this with Michael Morrissey. Because my brain automatically goes there. And so he was an assistant U.S. attorney. And so Mass Data is telling me that he did try a lot of cases, violent felonies and stuff such as like that. Maybe it's been a while. So I'm not saying that he's unprepared. That was my bad. My bad, which, if anyone knows my bad, I find that to be the most passive aggressive apology ever. Kristen's a driving instructor. Woo woo. I'm doing a pretty good job. And I got to say also that the newer cars have like really great safety features. This car like steers for you. If you put on that setting, it will literally steers for you as you're going around a corner. And also if you try and go out of the lane, it like moves you back in the lane. Like if you get one of these newer cars with the safety features, it's not so bad. So I just am saying that he's probably not as experienced as Michael Brown. Barbara Brady said, just wanted to use this. Oh, there's a new emoji. I made a new emoji that one of you guys sent me. Check it out. Hang on a second. I'm going to put it in the chat. Tell me if you can tell what it is. Tell me if you can tell what it is. Wait, I have to give credit where credit is due. Anybody? It's Cardi B. It's Cardi B saying hello. 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 Thank you to Amy Lynn who sent me that. Who sent me that? Do you love it? Do you love it? Yeah, we have special emojis, members. One of the few perks because I haven't done a members only in so long, which I guess I have to. Hold on, I'm gonna approve this comment. So XTRL Data Psy says, hold on, let me find it. So thank you, Zoe B. Thank you, Zoe B in chat. She's also our resident statistician. She created that Cardi B emoji, and all I did was upload it to as such the YouTubes. Magnolia Gypsy's been here for 19 months and says the Commonwealth has given us all brain rot. I know, I genuinely feel that way. XTRL. If I could find this, I'll highlight it and put it up on the thing here. Where is it? That's a good point, but it's on my phone, so I don't know where it is on here. Says DNA on sex worker is circumstantial, not direct evidence. Nuclear DNA is misleading. Somatic and germ cell DNA is nuclear, mitochondria, or organelle in cytoplasm. It's the method, not the template. So wait, are you, I guess you're also a scientist of some sort because you understand this far better than I do. And I'm willing to take any and all help here. It's the method, right? So this Astria Forensics is a lab that is accredited in California, not New York. And this method has not been used in court in very, very many jurisdictions, right? I wish somebody could just explain this to me like I'm 5. I got to scroll back from the chat now to find this. Psychology of 9 says, too funny. I have 9 kids. When they were little, I would whisper quietly one by one that they were each my favorite. They figured it out as they got old. I say that too. Like, you're my favorite. Don't tell the others. Don't tell the others. And I also said, well, I told Scarlett that she would promise me that she would stay 6 forever. And she didn't. She didn't. And I'm still mad about it. Oh, look at her. She says, yes, I'm in history, working hard to make a change in the world, just like Mama. Oh, boy. When I told Scarlett about, Kelsey Fitzsimmons, hey, Derek. Hey, Scarlett's friend, Derek. Derek loves my setup. All right. Hey, shout out to Derek. When I told Scarlett the story, because now that she's, going to be going to college next year, she was horrified when I told her about Kelsey Fitzsimmons. Kelsey Fitzsimmons. And then I said, listen to this. And we listened to some of the hearing, and she was even more horrified. And so, teach your children well is what I say. And try and be the voice for somebody who doesn't have a voice. And we've always said, right, Scarlett? I always tell you, try and give 3 random people compliments per day, and it will make your day better. And I can't find this comment right now, and I don't know why, but let me pin it in the chat for a second, and then maybe I can find it better. Although it doesn't show up on my end. So XTRL data scientists, let me know if you think that it's a reliable methodology of DNA testing, especially on things like rootless hairs, or if it is only, I don't know. I need somebody to, explain it to me like I'm literally 5 years old. Yeah, prayers up for Kelsey. That's a horrific case. It's pinned. Okay, good. But for some reason I can't highlight it. I have no idea. And then Esme said before that, but why would that be an issue? I never use SNP testing, but use WGS on a monthly basis in research. There's no difference in sequencing technique. I would love for you, Esme, and XTRL data scientist, to have a discussion about this, and then get back to me when you have some thoughts, because I need some. It explains to me like I'm 5. When they talked about DNA in school, I was like, what's for lunch? Laura, we already highlighted that. Thank you. And Mastad said, unpopular opinion, I disagree with Judge Maisie's Fry decision on LISK. The Fry decision is the decision to allow this new type of DNA testing in at trial. And he also said, Heuermann's jailhouse barber also works at the Norfolk County Pokey, I think. The haircut, his hair looks like it got cut by a hammer, right? I mean, you can't make that up. LC was the jailhouse barber in Norfolk County when Aiden Turtleboy Carney was in there with Brian Walsh and Harry Turk, who also looked like they got their hair cut by a hammer. And those haircuts were $5. And LC was the barber. And I thought LC was coming in like he was a barber that came into the jail to do the haircuts. But apparently he was also an inmate. And then he got transferred. And I think the new barber is worse based on, well, we'll see Brian Walsh today. He should show up on Zoom for the hearing at noon. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see. And Karen Goldberg said that Megan Waterman lived right near her. Oh, that reminds me that when I did a show, one of the first shows I did on this, it had to be 2 years ago. A girl called in and she said that she was a dealer at Mohegan Sun, which is a casino in Connecticut, right across the Long Island Sound from Long Island. She was a dealer at Mohegan Sun, and that when the photos came out of Rex Heuermann, she remembered, because that guy's hard to miss and forget, that she dealt blackjack to him for something like 12 hours straight, like all the way back in the year 2000. And she never forgot it because he creeped her out so badly. And he was asking her all kinds of creepy questions. And it was wild. So if you haven't seen that show, it's in the playlist. Go back and watch it. And then it also came out that Maureen Brainerd Barnes also worked as a dealer. When I say dealer, I mean cards of some sort at a casino, at another casino in Connecticut. That wasn't Mohegan Sun. It was the other one. What's the other one? Yeah, he sat there all day long and he was like freaking her out. It was wild. Did he win? Foxwoods. Thank you, Little Cupcake. Foxwoods is the other one. Foxwoods is where I think Maureen Brainerd Barnes worked. But this caller, the girl who called in, she was at Mohegan Sun, right? And she remembered it like it was yesterday. She said, like, she would never forget him. Let me find out what the name of that show is, because it would be cool to play back a part of that show. We have like only 8 minutes before we got to flip over to the next show. Hold on, I'll tell you the episode, Joy. Let me just see if I can find it real fast. Let's see. It is in the playlist. Playlist. I should call it a playlist. The playlist is entitled Gilgo Beach /LISK Rex Heuermann, and it's in the show notes, the link. And then which one did she call into? Aha. Okay. The thumbnail has a red. It has a red background. I'll pull it up for you so you can see it. And it's called Gilgo Beach. Jane Doe number 7 identified as Karen Vergata. Is LISK suspect Heuermann connected? Well, I can't pull up the thumbnail because when I click on the video, it just pulls up the video. But let me see. Here. This is wild. Wait, that's Cammie. Okay. I'll let this play for a couple of minutes, but then when I hit end on this stream, we're going to teleport over to the 11:45 stream because we're going to be covering the Brian Walsh, Miles King hearing. Let's see. When did this show air? This show aired August 5th of 2023. So 2 years ago. Hang on. Okay. Her username is Through My Lens, THRU My Lens. And she just called in. I let like random people call in and come on StreamYard. And it was wild what she said. And I had no idea that she was going to say this. So let's take down this document. I don't know how much of it we're going to be able to watch until we have to flip over to the other show, but it'll give me a chance. I'm going to take myself off screen and I look a little bit different. I've lost weight since then. So yeah, we don't need to comment on it. I'll just let you know ahead of time. This is from August 5th of 2023. Let me put a banner on here so people will get it. Oops. All right, let's take a listen. Let me know that you can hear it. Through My Lens, you ready? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. All right, come on in. Hi, how are you? How are you tonight?
Hi, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I've been waiting to kind of share this experience with everyone.
Yeah.
I was a blackjack dealer at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which is directly and basically across from the Long Island Sound. We have ferries that constantly come over from the area. So we're constantly communicating and working with people from Long Island. It's part of our community almost.
Yep. For 1 second, just let me interrupt you 1 second. So there's a ferry that goes from Orient Point, which is the easternmost tip of Long Island, to New London, Connecticut. And when you get off the ferry in New London, they have a bus that will take you right to Mohegan Sun. Yeah. Right.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
it will. So you can
easy to
take the
get there.
high-speed ferry over and you bring your car.
You're kind of breaking up on me.
And the areas on Long Island where the roads next to the beaches. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The roads next to the beaches are very desolate. Even during the day when you're driving on there, you're not seeing many people. It's definitely a secluded area.
Mm-hmm. I think I lost you again. You froze up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I did want to tell you about the experience. Can you hear? You're spinning.
Yep.
So I had an experience with who I think was Rex Heuermann on my blackjack table. He was just a single person that came up to my table, and what made me remember him is that all night long he was taunting me in a very specific way, saying that my husband was at home and that he was bringing women to our home while I was at work. Like, kept it up, and it was more detailed over time. He sat on my table for 8 hours and consistently taunted me that
8 hours.
he was very
Oh, wait,
detailed
wait,
about
hold
how,
on. Your audio's
yes,
going out
when
at all the
he drops
important
you off
parts.
at work, he picks up other women, and it was like he enjoyed seeing my reaction of being defensive and upset about it. And he just kept
When was
on
this?
all
Do you know
night
what year
long,
this
and
was?
it was something of those kind of experiences. Yeah, it was quite a while ago. It was like 22 years ago, probably around 2003.
Okay. 2003.
That
Okay.
this
So
happened, and it stuck in my mind. I remembered what he looked like. You spend 8 hours with a person, they make an impression on you. So he stayed the whole shift, and what really struck me was how the other women in the yep, the other women in the interviews were talking about how he enjoyed the taunting behavior, and it really, like, struck a chord. When I wasn't sure about who he was, I was watching the interviews and they didn't show anything of him wearing glasses. And I thought, well, it's probably not the same person. But then I saw an interview where he was talking about his architecture. He had a pair of glasses sitting on the table. And it was like chills down my spine when I saw those glasses, because that was like the final picture of who I saw in my mind from my memory and what he looked like. He was considerably thinner then now at that time too.
wow. So this would have been like all right, you're saying 2003. And somebody said in the chat that you were 23 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye, Karen Kruger.
And
It
you
was
spent 8
nice
hours
for
with
you to
this
be
guy.
here.
Yeah,
But you know what?
but he
Block
made
Island
such
is
an
really nice this time of year. Block Island is really nice this time of year. What a disgusting human being you are, Karen Kruger Viljoen. You will never be allowed in this chat room again. Rushing on you because he was so creepy that you never forgot him. And this is 23 years ago. Yeah. So what reminded you of this? Was it when you saw his picture in the paper that it jogged your memory, or is this something that you've kind of remembered all this time?
And the way he said to you that he's like, they're there touching your stuff. And it was just like such a weird detail to me, like that it really made me like feel upset. And when I thought about the fact that they said that he possibly brought these girls to his home, it made me really wonder, like, was he talking about something that he had done himself, bringing women to his home? He acted as if this is just what all men do and that I should understand that, and that he was making me wise to who men were. It was a very weird experience. I've
Wait,
never
so I
met
want you to
anyone with the same
rewind.
kind of vibe. Go ahead.
I want you to rewind for a little bit because you did fade in and out a little bit. So people were saying that they wanted you to repeat a portion of that story. So you said that he said that people were touching your stuff. Can you just rewind a little bit and talk about that again? Because I think we missed it with the connection.
He was taunting me by saying that while I was at work, my husband would pick up women and bring them to our home. And that he said, right, like basically his taunting of me would get more advanced as the time we spent together. And that the woman is at your house right now, and she's probably touching your stuff. She's probably laying on your bed, and basically just advancing the description of what this fantasy woman that bringing to my house to cheat on me with while I was at work. It was a bizarre way to taunt someone. Very bizarre.
Yeah. Like he was trying to get under your skin. Like, it sounds like a personal anecdote, almost, right? Of his. Like that's something that he would do. But how did he know you were married? He just saw a ring and he just assumed and he just started spewing this bullshit at you. Like, how did that even? I'm sure you weren't telling him any of your personal information. It's not like you, right?
Well, there was some conversation. Well, there was some conversation first about, back then I wasn't really
I just
thinking
lost you
about it.
again.
I had a picture of my
Okay.
son on my badge. You wear a ring. You don't think about, the fact that you're giving me details of your life. Oh. All right.
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
were
link.
young.
Yeah.
I'm going to link this video below, but that was chilling when it happened and it's still chilling today because we got to jump over to our next event. We're going to Norfolk Superior Court. Love Ralphie in the background. And Nipsey617 says, can we talk about the puppet lady? Yeah, there was a puppet lady in The Golden Bachelor that brought like a puppet and she was talking to him with her puppet when she came out of the limo. It was so weird. Thank you. I need someone to talk about this with. All right. I'm going to teleport you over to the 11:45 stream so you don't have to do anything except buckle your seatbelt. And be nice. Smash the like button on your way out. Smash it again on your way in. And I will see you there in 3, 2, 1. Safe travels, everyone. We'll come back and cover more Rex Heuermann real soon. Peace.